Hello, welcome to the Labor and Work podcast from the Kim Morris Center at Auckland University in Michigan. I'm your host, Sufeng Zhang, Director of the Kim Morris Center and Associate Professor of Organizational Leadership Department at Auckland University. Thank you for joining us. In each episode, we chat with industry professionals to share insights, trends, and action strategies to promote positive labor relations in an era of rapid social change. In previous episodes, we discussed job changes, workforce challenges, and talent development strategies to meet current and future needs as we transitioning from Industry 4.0 to 5.0. And we also discussed the power of a triangular relationship among government, professional organizations, and academic institutions to support corporations and employees in navigating the transition. Yet another critical factor that we have not talked about is labor relations. In this episode, we will focus on building positive labor relations in the age of intelligence. I'm excited to have Courtney Scott with us today. Courtney is a global human resources and labor relations executive with deep expertise in enterprise workforce strategy, labor negotiations, and organizational risk management across highly unionized automotive and manufacturing environment. He currently serves as Global Vice President of Employee and Labor Relations at Tenneco and oversees labor strategy for more than 200 manufacturing facilities, 14 engineering centers, operations, and nearly 71,000 employees worldwide. Courtney has successfully led complex collective bargaining negotiations, ensure business continuity, and strengthening employee relations during period of transformation, growth, and operational change. Welcome, Courtney. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to talk through this.
Hi, Courtney. So, how long have you been working in HR and labor relations?
So it's funny you asked this question, and I started to reflect. And honestly, I gotta say, pretty much all my life. And I say that because my father was a business owner. He owned a garbage and sanitation company, and I grew up in it. And he's second generation, so my grandfather started it, and then my dad took it and ran. And now it's went down generations behind us with my cousins and things of that nature. And within that, you always had pieces to this, right? Where you had human element pieces to it, dealing with employees, dealing with people, dealing with issues. And it's funny because officially on papers it's been about 15 years, but when I reflect over my life, pretty much a lot of what I've done was in the HR space. I think it was a calling that I kind of got pulled into.
Wow, that's very interesting perspective to look it that way. So, based on your experience in HR and labor relations, what are the current trends or problems in labor relations practice? If maybe you could share like something that you currently face and deal with regularly.
I think right now, I mean, one of the biggest things is, of course, we all talk about is AI, right? Artificial intelligence, using technology. It's funny because what we do a lot now in this space with AI, you're driving different scheduling, performance tracking, data analytics, those type of things really drive difficult conversations. And I think the first thing we really have to look at is teaching behind it, right? Not everybody is comfortable with AI. Not everybody understands AI. And even myself, been through classes and I had to learn what does this mean and how to use the tool to help complement me. And I think that's where a lot of people think when they hear AI is we're taking a job from somebody, not saying that, hey, this is going to complement the worker, that's going to complement the skill set more so. And what scares me a little bit is we don't teach that enough in the labor space. So when I have conversations, for example, we had a situation in which we used and made a change. And of course, the first thing the Works Council said, well, you're taking away heads. No, we changed the element of the job to help optimize for production and performance. That doesn't mean we're letting anybody go. We might have to repurpose the skill set somewhere else. But typically, when you hear AI, especially in labor, it's automatically you jump to we're letting headcount go, we're terminating people, we're firing. And I think that's where you're seeing a lot of the bigger conversations that come up now. And then around that, I would say more of the non-traditional work arrangement. COVID changed the world. We went for 5 days in the office, and so now you see more of the remote work, contract work, and even the hybrid schedule, the flexibility around that. How do you make that equal and fair across the board? Lastly, behind that, you're seeing a lot of the tension around wages, job security, work-life balance. I think that especially in automotive, you're seeing a heightened fear more than any time because you have, a lot of changes with the technology. You have, some of our OEMs, especially in the Asia region, that's coming to market a lot more aggressive and faster with technology. And some of us got to catch up, especially in the U.S. auto space.
So have you had that conversation about it's sensitive? So just kind of talking about like you're gonna let somebody go because you're gonna adopt an AI and how difficult that was it and how
Yeah,
did you handle that?
yeah. I mean, I think speaking for me specifically, before we even get to that point, we're going to try to exhaust every avenue to find the person another place, right? That's first and foremost. But unfortunately, yeah, you do get to a point where you see some adoption in AI because it does make the job move faster, right? It does help fix some of the kind of repetitive motion activities, and which fortunately does lead to that. Now, I would tell you, you're still going to need some human oversight because we're starting to see more and more, even, I would argue some of these chat GPT sites where the data's not not consistent. And I'm laughing because I literally had an argument with chat GPT the other night about something because they're trying to tell me this was right. And I know it's not right because I did the process. And that's where I've always argued that you have to be careful a little bit with the AI side of things because some of the data might not be right. Some of the prompts you gave it's not completely computing properly. And if you don't have that aligned right, your information responding out is wrong. But to answer your question, fortunately, yes, we have had conversation and saying, hey, we moved this, we shifted in this different model. And I think that's just the way you're seeing more and more companies shifting in those type of models of, hey, we instead of having a call center, we can have prompts that break down its issues. Instead of paying, a human to kind of go through this, we can kind of narrow the issue down first, and then instead of having 10, we can move down to one. And those, unfortunately, are conversations we've had.
I like your response because you just kind of demonstrate what critical thinking is. This is good. So, given shifting business strategies and workforce structures, positive labor relations that enhance employee morale, motivation, job satisfaction, and productivities are more crucial than ever. Sounds like it. And so, adapting AI and smart technologies has heightened attention around job security, as you mentioned, and also we talk. It's important also to consider the human machine interaction, and it also changed the way we work, and especially after the pandemic. I think everything goes online more. We have actually now more option to move things online. That underscores the important part of labor union in maintaining or improving the employment conditions, which is like an ideal employer union partnership for positive labor relations. But in reality, what challenges are labor union facing today, and how have these challenges in your perspective influenced the employer union partnership?
Well, I think the first and foremost is you see a declining membership in many of the industries, especially the sectors dominated by Gig Four, technology based. Many of the younger workers are unfamiliar with unions and they question it, right? Why do I need to pay so much money for something that I can manage myself? And really, that's what you're seeing a huge shift in, right? When we think about the history of it, especially in the automotive space, you look at unions were there to help employees get proper pay, benefits, things of that nature, and now you see the change where a lot of the employees are pretty much fair to the market, right? I still think we got some ways to go, but we're pretty fair to the market. But the younger generation and the younger workers are like, why am I paying this for what? I have the conditions. I can negotiate it. I have an NLRB, a EEOC, a OSHA resource that I can go to and complain. And then when you look at it from a union perspective, you see the legal battles, you see the investigations, you see the changes in the NLRB, the process, even the bargaining process, even though Cemex has kind of changed that, right? We're sped that process up, but you see a lot of changes as well as the technological changes, and it's very difficult for the unions to keep pace with the evolving job roles and skill set. I read an article this morning where Ford is looking for all these skilled trades that's typical base pay. I think he said was 120. The CEO of Ford did $120,000 a year. They just don't have the skill set to do a lot of the skilled trades work. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing in the workforce now, right? We lost that kind of that skill set around the skilled trades, especially in automotive, and that declining employee, right? Not declining employee, but the seasoned employee that's tiring out, that knows the skill set, the pipe fitters, your electricians, your plumbers, things of that nature. We don't have those employees that can come in and fix the machines or fix the problems with their bare hands. And I think the other piece to this is the public perceptions. It's a challenge right now. You got unions that have advocating aggressively towards workers, but yet you're still going to have that collaborative working relationship to remain effective and credible.
So, based on your interaction with unions, then do you know how they handle this right now? What do they do to deal with those challenges?
I think the biggest thing we've seen, especially in automotive, is this recent strike, right? The Facebook platforms, the social media platforms, changing the perspective, being very transparent on where they want to go with respect to bargaining. Just recently, I read an article and President Fain from the UAW is pushing for pensions and work-life balance, increased wages, pushing for the southern states membership, tagging off the Volkswagen tentative agreement they got down in Tennessee. So I think you're starting to see a bit of a shift, and they're saying, you know what, we know the younger workers might not know who we are, so we're going to go to them. We're going to come to these social media platforms that they're used on a regular basis and be present, be online, live stream these interactions, live stream some of this stuff that goes on so they can see it, right? And they can be a part of it. And you see the numbers their following is going up. I mean, they literally went out, especially on the UAW side, and focused just on that. And that was pretty impressive. It's a start strategic move because you even have workers in the plants now who follow it and listen, and it keeps them abreast of what's going on in contract negotiations as well as what's going on in the world of labor relations.
I see. Interesting. So, not just the unions are having a hard time keeping pace with evolving job changes, employer and workers are also struggling. And also, I found the challenges, public perception, very interesting, which you just mentioned earlier. Could you provide a little bit more detail on this? Like, what exactly do you mean by the public perception? How this really influenced the unions?
Well, I think that when you start looking at, some of the things that we've seen historically, right, over the past, with even the quote unquote, they have the mobster mentality unions. That stuff is back then, right? Now it's a new generation, right? But that perception still follows them, right? I worked with Teamsters, specifically out of the local 299, which is James Hoffa's Teamstering, right? And the first thing you hear James Hoffa is a negative connotation. And for me, I look at it a little differently. He is a gentleman that stood up in a leadership position and fought for equal rights, fought for equal pay, fought for some things. And I think that, most people don't look at it that way. They look at it, they see the movies, the mob stuff, and we don't know where his body's at, things of that nature. But the public still carries that piece to them, right? They still look at it and say, they're in it for their own perception and their own winnings. And unfortunately, that's in anything, right? That you can argue that in anything, but I've learned that the more you dig into it and you do your homework and you do your research, you start to really understand what the intent of what the unions were there for.
I see. Yeah, that's very important. If people know more about really what unions for and what unions could do for them, then that perception could be changed. And maybe there's a greater way that we could promote better employer union relationships. And of course, that it would promote the labor relations. In your perspective, now we talk about several different key points so far. So how do we promote positive labor relations in the age of intelligence?
I think the biggest, though, I want to quote a former professor at Oakland, Ken McCarter. Ken was the former vice president of labor well, it was Chrysler at that time, and he taught me when you figure out the employee issue, you figure out the labor issue, and I took that with me my entire career. So when you look at the age of intelligence, number one, I think and I truly believe is the fear of the unknown, right? And you have to build that trust. You have to communicate, and we have to be ethical with how we're using our technology. There's in different countries you have laws around some of that stuff that you can and cannot do, and being forthcoming and being open and saying, hey, listen. We're looking at this technology. This is what it does. This is how we're going to house this. This is how it's going to stay safe, where we're not putting it to the public or it's not being bought or sold, things of that nature is the key piece, right? Being transparent and how we're using it from a decision making standpoint. When you start thinking about performance evaluation, promotion, disciplines, how are we using these AI tools? And that's where it gets a little tricky, right? You've seen cases where AI tools were used for hiring practices or deciding candidates, then kind of acquisition side of things. And again, if you don't monitor this and if you don't oversee it, if you don't dig into it, it can get you into some serious water. But I also think it's gonna create an environment of just continuous learning and reskilling, right? A lot of these artificial intelligence tools really are there to help you. But with that, you got to learn more about it. Again, like we talked, how to use the certain prompts, even how to use the AI tool, what to say to it to get to where you want to go. It's a process. Like I literally taught myself how to write prompts, what steps to take if I want to do something. For example, build a website. I want to create this website or a landing page. These are the prompts I need to do, and I walk through that. That's where I believe that's where our future is going, right? I see it more, right? I see more of that piece and how we get there. But the biggest thing, in my opinion, to go back is open dialogue, engage with employees, let them tell you how they feel. I mean, that's been my number one thing is when I meet with employees and they say they have a problem, try to understand, seek to understand what steps they feel and why they feel that. And then from there, it's collaborative, right? And I'll be honest with you, because of the fair, sometimes the collaborative piece gets a little shaky, but at least we have both points. We can sit there and talk through it and try to understand both sides.
I love it. I like what you said about know the employees. Really, that is a very critical things and like the first step you have to do. So from the HR's perspective or standpoint, particularly if you could, the HRDs, can you talk about like, so what's HR's role in fostering positive labor relations?
So I want to split this up in two pieces, right? Because you got the HR side and then you got the labor side. From the HR side, I've always recommended. Unfortunately, a lot of HR professionals they move away from the labor relations space because the worry about a contentious relationship with unions and things of that nature. They're like, you know what? I don't want to argue. I don't want to fight. And for me, I've always, shared with people I've mentored, take time to understand the labor piece because labor relation touches everything, benefits, payroll, contract. I mean, we literally have our hands in so many different pieces because we have to fix issues that arise. And the only way you know how to fix the issues, you deep dive into the issue to understand why there's a problem. So from the HR standpoint, I would say you really have to dig deeper into it, and really that creates that makes you to be a better business partner. That makes you, and I don't want to say I want to say that for a sense of being a true business partner in HR means that you have to dig into the business. You have to understand what your role is. You have to really, understand what the problems at, whether it's employee, whether business or it's not. And then from there, you kind of foster that relationship, right? Now, from the labor piece, as I mentioned before, Kim McCarter, understand the issue, research, understand past practice, understand their environment, spend time out looking when you go out have this employee, ask them where this stuff took place, where the problem was at. If it's a shop floor issue, if it's not, you can do it a little bit differently, but make sure you dig deeper into it. Because to me, what I've learned over my career is when you ask those questions, sometimes you actually point the employee back to fix the problem. A lot of times they don't seek to understand, they don't seek to understand the employee's position, and they don't talk it through. Majority of employees, they don't want to be in trouble. They don't have no passion to get in trouble. They just don't understand why something happened. And my role and what I train my team is go and understand, seek to understand, ask the questions behind the question, dig deep. We use the terminology, peel back the layers on the onion and get down to the root cause of what's really going on.
Well, I hope for those who hear in this podcast, they will know HR could be very important and very kind.
Yeah.
Like, people sometimes they hear HR, oh, I don't like HR.
Yeah, and it's the perception, right? It goes
Mm-hmm.
back
Yeah.
to, and you know what? It bothers me because, especially like the labor side, when I was in plants working, you'd hear the cop sirens going off, employees would make noises and stuff, and you looked as the bad guy. And I always wanted to change their perception. Yeah, I have to uphold some policy procedures and things of that nature. However, I'm still a human being. However, I still like to go down and say hello, talk to the employees, ask them about their family, and I've built relationships in every location I worked in because my approach was totally different. I'm no different than they are. I put my pants on the same way they do. I'm not better than them. I don't never go into this is my title. I don't care about that. I am who I am as a person. That's first and foremost, and I respect what they do because if you take time and just really look at some of the employees and what they do on a daily basis, you come to really appreciate it. Like I could imagine standing 8 to 10 hours doing the same thing over and over again, 700 cycles. It would drive me nuts. Like I just couldn't do it. No music, no nothing. Like I would struggle with it. And I remember we had a conversation with an ops leader, and I was telling him I couldn't imagine driving 10 hours with no music. But yet we have employees that work in these conditions with, and there's reasons why, and I don't disagree with that. But when you think about that from a employee's perspective, you have to take your hat off and say, man, wow, they put in a very tough day's work. And when you start to seek to understand that person and employee and why they're doing what they're doing, you have a better appreciation for them, and you don't treat them less than. And that's where I'm a huge component of the positive relationships. Now, again, I'm not going to say that I haven't unfortunately disciplined people or let people go. No, that's part of the business. However, the steps going up to it, I try to exhaust all avenues by training, retraining, things of that nature, because you invest time and money in employees, right? And whether it's onboarding, training, all this money and time you put into this person, again, and I truly believe employees are not there to try to make mistakes. Sometimes mistakes made, you course correct them, right? That's just the nature of the business. That's no different than your children, your grandchildren, or whatever. You try to course correct them and say, hey, you made a mistake. Let's not make this again. Now, if it can piece to be repetitive, then unfortunately, you have to go down the disciplinary track. But I truly believe most people come to work, good intentions, come in and do a good day work, or even there's days that they come in with unfortunately, a bad situation happen to them. Be understanding of that and engage EAP resources, things of that nature, help the employees through it because they'll be super appreciative. I mean, and me, I truly thought and believe that the more you do for that person to solve those issues, you got a great employee back. You can't put a time or return on investment for 20, 30-year employee. And some of my plants, I have 50-year seniority employees. And I always have conversation. I'm asking them, Why did you do this? What's changed? What can we do better? I mean, I always sit in the plant and talk to them. And there's times where I bought them lunch, and then you'll be blown away the appreciation that they share, just saying, "Hey, I appreciate you just asking those questions." But I learned so much from that, from when times has changed in the space of, we were fighting for jobs, and you had a referral to get into the job, to where now the market has shifted. So you learn from that, and that's how you build from there. That's how you build your toolkit, so to speak, within the labor space.
That's great. I mean, clear shows like an important part of the leadership. I mean, based on your response, I feel like that's what we need at a workplace when we see someone leading and also demonstrate and showing as an example, like how we interact with employees. And that's a very much like I want to say the HRD part, the concept of HRD in this. So we don't treat employers like we hire you, so you're just here to work. I don't care about you. No, that's not, and it shouldn't be that way. We really need to understand their needs and look at them as like us, a normal human being. How do we want to work life balance? How do we work efficiently and understand them? Understand their need, their frustration with all the changes. So yeah, that's just perfect response and answer to this.
Yeah, you know what? I'll be honest with you though. At Oakland, I'm very involved on a few different boards, and luckily I'm part of the HRD board, and that's what I talk about a lot with the advisors and the professors of, hey, when we're looking at from an educational standpoint, there's textbook things we need to learn, but there's also the EI side of things, emotional intelligence side of things. There's the listening, the active listening side of things, responding to employees. There's those soft skills that go a long way. I'll be honest with you, I'm not the smartest person in the world by no means, but I've always tried to pride myself in those soft skills where I can ask those questions. I can, learn from that and take that and grow from it. And I think that's where when you're talking about the positive employee relations, labor relations piece, I applaud everybody. Please, please, please learn some soft skills, especially the younger generation, the younger workforce. They grew up with, cell phones, texting, and don't get me wrong, I completely understand that part of it. My nephews and I, we were texting, and they're in their early 20s this morning. And, some days I just need you to pick up the phone and call me. We could have got this accomplished in 5 minutes that we just spent 45 minutes going through via text. And you see that in the workspace where, a lot of employees, they feel comfortable sending a text message, hey, listen, I'm not going to make it today because I have a personal issue. Hey, why don't you pick up the phone? Hey, are you okay? Is everything okay? Do we need to get you some EAP? Do we need some resources to help you through this? Here for you. Those little small things that you do go a long way to make the environment better, right? Make to change the morale. And the funny thing is, those are your number one spokespeople in these plants, right? They're the ones that's going out and saying, hey, you know what? Courtney called me the other day. I thought he was upset. He asked me if I needed some help. Go see him. And you'll be surprised how many people they in a lot of our sites that I do now, they'll reach out to me and say, hey, I heard you were the guy that you might be able to help me. And that part right there to me changes the environment. It changes the culture because now they see HR again as a partner, as a leader, as a true business partner in business itself. And you're fixing these issues that operations is not going to deal with. Other teams are not going to deal with. They're focused more on the overall business, whereas we're there to fix those other things to help the business run smoothly.
Exactly. And I also want to mention about the soft skill you just mentioned. I think that is really, you know, people talk about it, and especially right now in the age of AI, really, we don't upskill, reskill our employees on those hard skill that machine could do, the
Yep.
machine learning could do, or AI could do. We want to develop their, in other words, the human skills, the part skills that a machine will be hard to do. I wouldn't say they never, but I think it's going to be quite some time. I don't think that is machine could be capable with, like a
Yeah.
critical thinking part, for example.
100%. I mean, that's the piece that we have to train leaders, the unions, the works councils. That's what I do now. I teach and tell them and show them, okay, we might use this tool to get to a problem, but we still need that human critical thinking to fix it. This is just to help get to a point, but that human is still there to fix this issue. And that's the piece where, again, when a lot of people hear AI and oh, we're taking our jobs, like no, it's enhancing that process. It's enhancing how you can go from here to there in a quicker time. Especially when you're talking like a maintenance tech, we use some software that actually helps maintenance troubleshoot faster because you're trying to process this in your mind. Okay, and I worked on cars and I tinker on things all the time at home, and my wife would tell you, and a lot of times when you're trying to troubleshoot what are the problems, that if I had something to get me there faster, it would help me eliminate things quicker. And that's where you're looking at that skill set. I was like, all right, let me troubleshoot through this and see if that's the problem. Oh, here's the real issue right here. So instead of me spending 45 minutes to an hour trying to fix a problem, I got it fixed in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, lots of good information. So it's hard. I'm not quite sure how to conclude this because there's so much good information. But a quick way to say, I think overall, based on what we have discussed, I think to build positive labor relations in the age of intelligence, we basically need to, first of all, very important, change the public perception about union. So we need to look at the unionization as a mechanism to promote or to enhance employer-employee partnership, and also to foster positive labor relations. We could do such like building a proactive and an open two-way communication system, which of course involve the feedback loop and forming the trust and practicing ethics. I think this is also important in a collaborative effort, upskilling, reskilling for continuous development and developing and practicing human-centered leadership that we just kind of touch on, especially HR could play a very important role on this. And finally, also advocate the benefits of positive labor relation. Think about how positive that could bring it not just to the employee, but also to the employers as well. Examples such as like employee will be happier, happier, their satisfaction and morale and increase the productivity. And of course, overall, everyone, the readiness for changes. Well, thank you so much, Courtney, for being on the podcast. And your insights and comments are very valuable and helpful.
Well, thank you. I greatly appreciate it. I'm glad I could help.
So that's all for this episode on building positive labor relations in the age of intelligence. Thank you for joining us. We will catch you next time.